call this meeting of the SRPC Regional Planning Committee to order. Well, now let's start with introductions. Rick, please start us off.
Ray Healy, Rochester Planning Board.
Don Manager, Northwood.
Steve Stansel, Wakefield.
John Mullen, Middleton.
Matt Young, Barrington.
Kate Bassard, Middleton.
Michael Williams, Coast. Marshall Goldberg, Brookfield.
Lee Elwood, Milton.
Mike Lehrman, Durham.
Joe Bonneau, Rochester.
Mark Richardson, Summersworth.
Mike Levinsky, Summersworth.
Lou Brown, Dover.
Paul Rasmussen, Durham.
Mark Davies, staff.
Jen Sis, SRPC staff.
Colin Lentz, staff.
Krista Jane, over.
Ian German, Dover.
Jim Casper, Lee. Corinne Morgan.
Mike Palazzati, SRPC.
Rachel Boone, SRPC.
Right, and on online we have Lisa.
Lisa Murphy, SRPC.
And Jack.
Morning all, Jack Wade, New Hampshire DES.
Lindsay.
Lindsay Williams, Dover.
Bill.
Morning, Bill Watson, New Hampshire DOT.
Couldn't hear you, Bill.
Sorry about that. Bill Watson, NHDOT.
Glenn.
Glenn Griswold, Nottingham Planning Board.
And Megan, thank you. Okay, just a brief announcement. We had a resignation from the executive committee back in December. Steve Stansel, our alternate, has stepped up and filled the regular position, but we do now have an opening for an alternate. So if you're interested, let us know.
Yeah.
And we'll, get you nominated. If you're not sure, reach out, talk to any of us on the council or Jen or whoever. Good. That come. Review of November minutes.
Oh, November.
Any questions on November minutes?
December.
It says November here.
December, January.
Yes.
Oh. Yeah, it should be December or January. I'd like to come in January. I was there.
Okay.
Can we add me
Definitely.
back in? Thanks.
The thing was past the January meeting. Yeah, okay.
Oh, I was on there January.
Are you not on here?
Just to add to Katrina's point, I was attending as well. I think, Mark, you were there too. I didn't see your name on the brochure. For January.
For January.
like 4
Okay.
Mark, and Krista was.
Oh my gosh, what? Yeah, so I think we may not have had a complete sign-in sheet.
Okay, that's what it was.
Yeah, that's okay. All right, so add to trend. Mike Levinsky, anyone else who was here and we did not capture? Mark Richardson, Ian? I'm listed, but I was not there. Okay.
Nice. Thanks.
This is the one where we had Senator Waters and,
Yeah.
I was there as well.
Yeah, I'm on. You weren't?
By the way, where are our windows?
You use mine now.
Yeah.
Down the street.
Down the street.
Right.
It was great having the windows.
That was the news.
Just to, should we record the other guests who were here? Donna Benton and,
Yeah.
Gretchen Young was there as well. I think of some other people.
Zach Creighton was there.
Yes, it is.
Jen, my name was spelled wrong.
I'm looking at the whole camera.
There'd be a period at the end of this thing.
It was the field trip, so we didn't. All right.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
Yeah.
By the way, That was a terrific meeting.
It was
really
great.
good. It was really good.
Thank you, it was, yes.
Yes, yes, yes. Can we move there full time?
Not just to be happy. Make a motion, we move full time.
Second.
Do not vote on that vote.
All in favor?
But it'll probably cause that.
Come to pick me up at 6 in the morning.
Okay, are we complete with the minutes? Motion to accept as amended,
So moved.
Second.
so Mike and Sarah. And, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Same.
And we have an extension over there.
Krista?
Yeah. The review of the master plan summary and outreach and findings. I mean,
That's why you said November.
okay. Then. Can I?
We had 2 sets of minutes. Was that motion for both sets of minutes or just the January? Okay. All right, so the next, well. Also just.
I only received the 2 agendas. And now I must have, or I lost one.
Okay,
It's up there.
we have it on the screen.
All right, minutes from December, minutes from January, mid-year budget adjustment.
All right, so a quick update on the budget, and I don't know, Mark, do you wanna just scroll to the summary table? That's in, that everyone has in their packets in front of them. So, each year we try, usually in December or January, we were a little busy in December and January, we do a mid-year budget adjustment. And the intent here is that we take a look at what has changed since we adopted the budget. A lot of times we will go into the start of the fiscal year, and when we are reviewing that budget in June, there will still be things that are in the works. There'll be applications or grants or proposals that we're working on, we think are probable, so we'll put them in there. And then as the year progresses, maybe we will know things with more certainty. And so last June, when we put the budget together, we had a lot of things that were out there and pending. So we put placeholder amounts in for them. So now we're able to say with certainty like what came forward, and that we can say, yes, we know that it's gonna be so much for this fiscal year. So those are some of those adjustments. We also have contracts that will carry forward from one fiscal year to the other. So when we're putting the budget together, we're guessing where we're gonna end up and what we're gonna have for the next fiscal year, and this allows us to correct. The reason we do this is each month the executive committee will review our profit and loss, the budget versus actuals. And so we'll see some things where we'll have like 0 in the budget, but we've got a lot of revenue in and it looks a little weird. Or we'll have things where maybe it got pushed out, and so it'll show that we're lagging behind. Or so it gives us that chance to have a better way of measuring our progress when we're looking at that budget versus actual report. So that's what is reflected here, primarily on the revenue side. Those changes are just that. They're the things that have firmed up. We know what they're gonna be for this fiscal year, or we know better what they're gonna be for this fiscal year. On the expense side, there's just a few different shifts in there. The shift on and personnel has been, we've had, this year we had a few people out on leave, and so we had some temporary coverage that is coming in to help. So it's just showing that fluctuation that we've had in providing coverage where we've needed it. And then there's a couple other different expense lines that have just been a little bit different, such as We had a couple computers that are dying prematurely, and so we had to bump up our equipment costs in the computers line. Our audit, we did not have a firm selected before we completed our budget, and we went out to bid and did not get any proposals and had to go with the firm that we had and had been bought out, and their new rates were dollars higher than they had been in the past, and so that's a big bump that goes to get there. That's kind of the big picture of what you're seeing when you look at our mid-year budget adjustment. Any questions on particular items?
Jen, on the audit, that's at the end of the year.
You'll, executive committee will actually be seeing the auditors, next month.
Oh.
So it's due by March, 31st of, and that would be for the fiscal year that ended June 30th, 2025. We normally will see that final audit report in, November. But because we were trying to hire a different firm and that delayed the start of the audit this year.
I was just wondering, there was still time to go out to bid again.
We will go out to bid again. Yes,
That's the big jump.
it's a huge jump.
Anything else?
Just one question on the federal agency agreements. And, you know, obviously there's been a decline of 28. Okay, is that going to be, in your estimation, is that going to be continuing or worse, accelerating in terms of a deficit?
On the federal agency side.
Right.
So the decrease that you're seeing there is, that's in the HUD congressional, earmark that we currently have, that where we have the award and we sub-grant to the other 8 regional planning commissions for all of us to work on our regional plan updates. That is a multi-year contract, and so it's reflecting where, drawdowns currently are and pushing some of the dollars from this fiscal year into next fiscal year. But I will say that, yes, we'll still see some dollars in next fiscal year, but because it is, an earmark, after next fiscal year, won't necessarily see that item there, and we'll see a decrease, and it'll be a more significant decrease because we are sub-awarding to the other 8 regions, so we're passing through quite a bit, for our books.
Is there any response that we can make in regards to that?
We are all chatting at the division level and looking at, phase 2 or something, as a next effort, but very nascent.
Is there any role for the commissioners to play with the candidates as they come into the midterm election?
That is something you can certainly always do.
You're not going to speak for the commission unless.
Right, you don't need any rules on this. Okay.
Motion to approve.
Second, do I have a second?
I'll second.
And from Michael. All in favor? Opposed? Same. Okay. Approval of Senate Strategy Committee members?
Yeah, so we had our first strategy committee meeting for the Comprehensive Economic Development Strategy for the Stratford Economic Development District back in late January. Part of this strategy committee was formed based on the updated bylaws that you all approved late last year. Given kind of the unique timing of meeting to start the SEDS, we compiled the list of members based on the different categories within the bylaws. And we've already had our first meeting, but we did want to present this list to you, which is in the packet and up on the screen, of our slate of voting members and non-voting members for you all to take a look at and approve.
So I'm happy to answer any questions about membership. Yeah, Mike.
Certainly, we're looking at a list of people in there. Just a question mark, I don't know if you have approached and they just couldn't find anybody, but we just wondering about any like developer type people and or from any of the larger organizations in the region. Just have names or go out, but
Yeah.
not been able to get people to.
So we were connected with Chinberg, had some conversations with him, but himself and several members of the staff were not able to commit the time this time around. So for developers, we were able to connect with what's it? Sean and Maggie Randolph from Harmony Homes. So we have them on there kind of playing a dual role employer and also some housing development. So when it comes time for us to try to recruit again, we're hopeful that we can get some other individuals in too.
And from the other questions on larger corporations.
Yeah, we tried to do some outreach there. We have some connections with TurboCam, who's a fairly large employer in the region, but we're not able to get a positive response from them. To be a part. Yeah, we could look into them for next time around. Yeah, we reached out to a few folks at the Rochester Industrial Park too, and it was a time commitment challenge. So thank you.
So I was just gonna note, because this is the first time that we are seating members on the strategy committee. We're bringing the slate of officers to you to vote them as the slate of members. But part of how we built into the bylaws is that as there are vacancies, that committee itself can nominate within itself and replace new members. So once they're formally and fully established, there'll be that ongoing body to make those appointments.
I just want to say, I appreciate very much that you included the school superintendent. That stood out to me. I mean, John's a relatively nice guy and easy to get along with, and I think that can be an interesting addition to all of us.
Yeah, for sure. We were
Sort of stepped out of the commercial and municipal and enters a different realm.
Yeah, we were excited to have SAUs in there as both their role as a major employer in local economies, but then also their important part of educating kind of the next generation of the workforce.
So does there need to be anybody from this board on here? Or is there anybody from this board on here?
There isn't, we certainly could. Steve, are you volunteering?
I would like to be on.
All right, we can include you. Our meetings are last Friday of the month at here at from noon to 2. Anything more?
You're gonna have a motion to approve.
I'll make a motion. This is a great list. I'll second.
We need to amend it to include.
Yes. Is that, is the motion to,
Motion to accept as amended.
thank you.
And I seconded that.
Correct.
That back row is gonna be trouble for there.
You just. There's a lady, they're just voices coming out of nowhere. Even the owl doesn't pick them up.
So we need a vote. So all in favor of the motion to accept the amended list? Aye. Opposed? All right.
We haven't been including our online people in our votes.
Oh,
Um,
I'm sorry.
I just remembered.
I'm sorry, online people.
Do we want to do just a retroactive? Are you good with all the votes?
I've been saying aye on my own here, so I've been voting.
Oh, I forgot, we have, Yeah.
Lindsay, Bill, Len, and Jack are voting.
If we do a roll call vote for the whole group,
It does.
yeah, that's where, yeah. So,
All of them in one.
Can I make a motion that we accept the previous ones and you better move forward?
And do that as a roll call vote? Can we do that?
I'm sure we're gonna keep,
I think.
we just voted, we could, who's gonna?
all right, I'll, so there's a motion on the table to have a vote to have a single vote to retroactively approve everything we did in a proper manner.
That sounds great. Approving December, approving January minutes, approving this committee
Mid-year budget
and the budget. Okay.
All of them.
Right, so I have a second. Who's the second?
Yeah, I'll say.
Michael's the Williams is the second. All right, so, let's see, I'll start it off. Paul Rasmussen, aye.
Steve Brown,
Mike Babinski, aye.
Mark Richardson, aye.
Joe Bruno, aye.
Mike Lerman, aye.
Lee Holland, aye.
Marshall Goldberg, aye. Michael Williams, aye.
Kate Bizarre, aye.
Dan Town, aye.
John Mullen, aye.
Steve Stansel, aye.
Don Mantor, aye.
Rick Healy, aye.
Back row.
Kristen Jane, aye.
Ian McDermott, aye.
Sharon Casper, aye. Sarah Raven, aye.
And online,
Lindsay
Leslie?
Williams, I.
Bill. Jack.
Abstain.
Glenn,
Glenn Griswold, aye.
Lisa. That's Bill again. Abstains. All right. Thank you for catching that.
Technically, what you're asking for is a reconsideration.
Okay, thank you. I'll change it from groups in my notes.
All right, 2026 Regional Highway Safety Performance Targets.
That's me. As Mark brings that up, once a year, we are required by the federal government to, under the current transportation bill, to set regional highway safety targets. This is part of the suite of performance measures. There are ones for pavement and bridge, kind of travel time reliability, and then safety targets we set once a year. So next week, we submit them along with the state of New Hampshire. They set theirs and submit them around August, and then we have a certain amount of time to set our own. Next, please. There is a delay in the data, but this is how it works. We've talked about this in the past, but for folks that are new, we adopt a Vision Zero policy in the past, or have, and adhere to that. The aspirational goal of zero fatalities and serious injuries on public roads in New Hampshire. That being the only sort of, I guess morally acceptable goal, that no death or serious injury is acceptable. Next week, Mark. So to that end, we use, this is a performance-based approach. We use data, best data we can get to set these long-term targets based on a goal of zero in the future. So what do we need to get, what targets do we need to hit to incrementally make progress on that? Next, please. It is a difficult target to hit, but worth the fight. We get these weird cyclical trends in the data. So these are fatalities. 2024 is the only complete year we have data for many reasons. You can see we had a bad spike in 2020, and we have come full circle to the exact number that we had in 2019. This is just a weird natural variation. Crashes happen
more or less randomly if you look across the geography of the state. It's just a weird part of it. It's humans behind the wheel, and crashes happen randomly. Next, please. We use a 5-year rolling average to smooth some of that natural variability, so we're not, chasing it in circles. This is one of the other targets, performance areas is the rate of fatalities per 100 million vehicle miles traveled in the region. We have a lower volume of traffic in our region relative to the rest of the state. I'll talk more about that. We took a look at the number of serious injuries. These are potentially life-changing injuries, whether that is traumatic brain injury or, without getting too graphic, serious injuries that require immediate hospitalization. The consistency issues that I mentioned up there, in a fatal crash that immediately bumps that up to reporting at the federal level. It gets real dark, but we have good data on where those happened and what happened to cause that crash. Serious injuries and other injuries, the detail in the data is harder to come by. Those are reported by municipalities. We may not have accurate location data for those crashes, but there's hope in that realm. We look at the rate of serious injuries as well. You can see the variability there. Next, please. Another specific area that we look at is the number of fatalities and serious injuries for crashes involving vulnerable road users or non-motorized users, so cyclists, pedestrians, folks in wheelchairs. Thankfully, that is a lower number, but you can see we had a spike in 22. We somewhat attribute that to higher numbers of people out walking around during the pandemic, especially in the springtime after, people were really excited to get that cabin fever done with. The region still lacks safe pedestrian facilities, but people wanted to go out and walk, so you had higher volumes of people out potentially getting in crashes with vehicles. But you can see a same sort of cyclical trend. The 5-year rolling average shows a positive decrease over time. Next, please. So, any questions on that before I talk about this?
I did, Colin. You mentioned under the relevant trends, one of the issues in New Hampshire is the fact that we don't have common law for seatbelts.
Yes.
And I'm wondering, are there stats included in these deaths and serious injuries as pertaining to lack of use of seatbelts and helmets?
Yes, so the officers who report to the scene collect copious amounts of detail about crashes, including kind of little football diagrams of what actually happened. Getting all of that detail to us through DMV, so the data go from the police officer to their station in the municipality, to DMV, to DOT, to us, after we beg for that data. So getting all of that into the hands of the agencies that are trying to figure out how do we address what's happening is tricky. And DOT is making, state agencies have made a lot of progress, including very soon, we hope to have an online platform where we can access that kind of information and look at it across the region and see, was it just someone who wasn't wearing a seatbelt and we can't do anything about that until legislation changes? Or were there other contributing factors at an intersection? So that data does exist. How it gets us is tricky.
I'm just thinking it would be a good way to try to maybe get argue for the legislation in the future.
Yes, definitely.
Colin, this data, back up the slide, how does that data go into the driver ed program? I think every kid, takes driver's ed, the insurance, decreases, makes it worthwhile. But does this data inform the driver ed instructors that they can include this in their classes?
That's a really good question. I don't know if it does. I've been on calls about safety and in general, DOT likes to includes driver's ed programs as much as they can like we had a safety summit recently. I very unironically have suggested that, a big improvement would be if every young driver had to take the practical defensive driving test that I took, where you take a vehicle up to 70 miles an hour and then slam on the brakes and see what happens. And it gets even more complicated. A, because it's really educational, and B, because it was just fun. And like, it was fun, but
How the hell do you do that?
it put the reality of what happens if you're not paying attention, like driving too close to a vehicle, and if you have to stop all of a sudden, like those sorts of things. So that, again, and Lisa did it too, most recently. So I don't know is the answer, but the driver's ed groups that I've talked to on these calls know these trends and are very, very concerned.
I'm seeing as a driver, and although it's not in our district, there are certain parts of the state where there are way too many accidents in a small section of the road. And I'm gonna mention exit 3 on 101 in Candia. They're getting fatalities and major injury issues in between 2 and 4, that stretch of road for whatever reason. And all of it, or almost all of it, this is, online chat, is that if you're not going 80 miles an hour, you're getting lost. So that to go to pile onto him, seatbelts, you're gonna crash at 80 miles an hour into the abutment of the bridge. The seatbelt's not gonna help you.
Yeah.
So I think the speed factor is probably more indicative of injuries and whatnot. Fortunately, 16 doesn't seem to have that Bermuda Triangle, but
16 fatalities are spread all over the place, but there have been too many of them just this year, really.
But it's not all in one place, is it?
I don't think so, but that's.
So I am cautiously optimistic and hopeful about the new platform that DOT is working to bring online that will enable RPC staff and others to better identify those sorts of hotspots. Because the crashes happen randomly, but occasionally there are spots where it's not random. So we can look at the details and get more of the information that the police officer writes down on the forms, and be more targeted in developing projects. It might change that. And the bridge abutment, that came up in a recent thing. So that's a tricky one. I guess can't move the bridge.
Well, exit 3 at 93 South was a solar glare issue.
Okay, yeah.
And that was not something that anybody can fix. Once that sun hits that magical spot and you're blind.
Yeah.
So that's, at least you can identify the issue. You can't do anything about it. That's frustrating.
You can warn the drivers that are approaching it.
Yeah.
And it's like, sometimes that's all, and if you drive it regularly, I mean, correct. Durham has a really bad one. Our main street, where all the crosswalks are, this time of year, that sun comes up right over the hill on Main Street, you're blinded. You got 4 crosswalks to go over, and you can't see nothing. And it's just the sun glare thing, especially when the roads are wet, either through snow melt or a recent rain. It's like, forget it, you gotta crawl through.
You have the blinker for the crosswalks?
Can't see, if you literally, you can't even see the cars in front of you, it's the sun, it gets so blinded.
So, if you'll allow me to keep going here, there are myriad issues, some within our control, many without, and some land squarely in the lap of the legislature. Next slide, please.
I think you addressed this, but you said that you have more hope about the data sharing about the DOT platform you were mentioning?
Yes, so, almost all municipalities or police departments submit their data electronically now. There are a few stragglers that are still submitting on paper. But that's been a big push. DOT is in the midst, state DOT is in the midst of, sort of awareness campaign almost. It's because the 90% of the problem is the human behind the wheel, whether it's sun glare or just a natural distraction, or someone, texting while driving. We stopped at a stoplight on the way to daycare and I was Oliver said, why is that guy brushing his teeth? Brushing his teeth, waiting at the red light, and just, what are you gonna do with what's in your mouth? But like, so, people that are just not making good decisions. So it's an intractable process. But for target setting, back one, Mark, maybe? So we have this long-term goal, so trying to do our best with the numbers we have. We're not gonna hit zero in 5 years. That would be amazing. We had a year with zero. That would be, what do we do right? By 2035, a 75% reduction in the number of fatalities, 50% reduction in serious injuries, and shooting for 100% reduction in non-motorized fatalities and serious injuries. I picked those numbers and have in the past where the number of fatalities isn't important. Reducing fatalities, I just chose that as having the greatest impact. So let's work on a 75% reduction. There are fewer fatalities and serious injuries. So 50% reduction, just sort of trying to be objective there. And then we have thankfully very few non-motorized fatalities and serious injuries. So with some careful and targeted pedestrian improvements, we could make places, we can, I feel like, better identify places where pedestrians are very vulnerable, where they are intersecting with vehicle traffic more commonly, and we can address those and slow the vehicle down. So we have some room to maneuver there. Again, aspirational. So you could next, perfect timing actually. So part of that recommendation is to set a regional target for the number of crashes, serious injuries and fatalities, and to support the state targets for the rate. So I'll talk more about that, I think, next.
One quick question. Does any of this data include ski mobiles and ATVs?
No, not really. So I have not heard of a crash happening in our region. I can think of very few. There's a crossing on Route 11, a few crossings on Route 11 where there would be snowmobiles. One zipped across me the other night. I have not heard of fatalities. That's a good question. I think those would come through the system if the crash happens on a road like Route 11. But if it's a fatality that happens on a ski mobile trail between two ski mobilers, that would not arise to us. Yep.
One, too. In this day and age, is anybody looking at driverless vehicles? I mean, it's incredible to see a vehicle go right past the stopped school bus, non-stop. They don't recognize the flashing lights. They don't recognize the sign. They go right by, and I've seen that.
I don't know of any driverless vehicle tests in our region, but certainly not in our region, let alone the state. We have not talked about that in the circles that I travel in New Hampshire.
I saw it in my hometown in Massachusetts.
Okay, that going past the school bus?
Yeah.
Yeah, so, that's a little little scary.
It's scary.
I don't know if that's more scary than, a human being blasting past the school bus in the fog, like happened to me the other day. Yeah, so I don't know. I haven't heard of anything like that. Next, please. So this is kind of a graphical look at, the solid lines are the data we have. The dashed lines are the, projections. And the dashed line kind of through the middle is the desired trend. We looked at what sort of smooth line we would need to hit the target of 75% reduction in fatalities by 2035. The dashed line behind that is the sort of mathematical limit that we would need to be under in each given year to make that target. We are not saying that whatever that is, 17 fatalities in 2027 is acceptable. That is based on the trends, the cyclical trends in the actual data. So we are anticipating a continued oscillation from year to year. And so that sort of sets an assumed target or an assumed number of crashes in that given year based on past experience. Does that make sense?
Yes and no. I understand what you're doing with the curve, but the question I have, and I apologize, I'm asking a question which I could have answered myself, but I just didn't get to it. Looking at either the 5-year and preferably the 10-year track record of the SRPC fatalities, have you just done a statistical analysis? There's just a statistical significant difference between the numbers over the 5 years, because you read between 5 and 21.
Right.
And with a small sample like that, I'm guessing the answer is no, there's not a statistical difference between them. And if you go 10 years, I'm not even sure then you're going to do, because the numbers are so small relative to the sample size.
You might have to go back. If you look at the sort of glacial timeline, crashes go down. In honesty, it's the big changes are with legislation, with, blood alcohol levels, seatbelts,
automatic braking.
Well, not in New Hampshire, but, texting while driving sort of laws, those sorts of things. Those make the biggest dent, just increases in the safety technology in cars. And more cars having more technology as they come online. So you're right, it is more statistically significant the greater you take into account.
Right. So I'm just sort of wondering, when you set those trends like that, you're sort of projecting just, you can have a wavy line like that, or you could have a, 3 in a row and then 3 low.
Right.
But have you actually just done a test yourself to see if there is a statistical difference? Because I'm guessing that probably isn't.
Not anything fancy like an R squared or anything like that. The 5-year rolling average is prescribed. So. Rachel has written, please.
So we've been watching this data since 2007. We've been watching it. The 5-year rolling average trend line stays pretty flat, like the orange solid part of it is there, but the blue line does up and down every year. And yeah, it's, statistically it's pretty even right around 15. We do have random years where there's a really bad crash, like 2019 with 7 motorcyclists. Like we'll have incidents like that year gets a little skewed comparatively, but no, the trends are pretty flat, unfortunately.
Yeah, you just look at the numbers.
Just a quick question. I was heading south on 16 and it said 9 fatalities this year. Is that what is that? Is that SRP? Is that in our region? Is that just
that's statewide?
That's the statewide number.
Yeah, state DOT, and then the transportation systems operation is management, the command center. They update those.
I got you. Okay. Thank you.
Are there plans to track differences because of the lack of inspections now?
I'm not aware of any. We're still kind of in a holding pattern of will they stay or will they go?
Well, nobody knows,
Right.
you know, nobody's a soothsayer on this, but.
So that kind of data would come from the reporting officer, you know, suspect brake failure or something like that.
So it's kind of on the radar, but it's not.
Yeah.
Nothing
people-
official.
It's, yeah, no, nothing.
Okay.
Sorry, just to comment on that. This is very disturbing. From the following perspective, we do this every year. DOT collects it every year. And yet we come out with eliminating annual inspections. Like, this doesn't make sense.
No.
Well, I think the interesting question will be is in 10 years, if it does get eliminated, it doesn't come back, look at the data in 10 years and see if there's or whatever. You're gonna need probably 10 years data to.
We don't get to make those kinds of statements in this document, right?
In the document, no, that would be the commission's prerogative to direct staff or go yourself to speak to legislators as they consider various bills.
And there would be great actions for the, what we call a metro plan or a long range transportation plan, which we will be talking more about in the near future.
Really trust you with my plan. You just talked about you said, do we know what possible mechanisms are for the cyclical piece? I know we just talked about it. Does that discussion we just had answer your question, Glenn, or?
It really is strangely just noise in the data. It's not really clear from year to year that one thing or another is driving that cycle. It's like Rachel mentioned, there was the motorcycle crash in 1 year. That year was still lower than the previous in terms of motorcycle fatalities for the state, despite that high profile one. So it's any given year. It's really strange.
Do you get information on where the trips originate and are ending from these accidents? Because it would, interesting piece of information would be, is it a driver from out of the area who's just passing through, or is it a local driver who should be very familiar with the roads?
That, I'm not sure how we would know that necessarily. The license plate information is considered protected, so that is never gonna come to us in this universe, I don't think. As far as origin and destination, I've never seen anything about that collected.
That is one of the things we talk about, reducing trips, making trips shorter. Would it have an effect or not? We don't know. So you just said, Thomas, we have no way of knowing whether actions along that line would be good. Yes, all right.
Colin, on your data, do we have enough data to do something like a chi-squared analysis?
I'll make that one.
Yeah. Statistics is a long time.
Not in time for this annual discussion. So unfortunately, the way that the timing works on setting these targets, we're required to set these targets and present these numbers to you about a month before the federal fatal crash data set gets published. And because of privacy concerns, the Department of Safety won't release the actual fatality data set to us in advance. So I just get a list of dates, number of people, and whether it was someone in the car, outside of the car, or on the motorcycle. Yeah, so the data that we get in time to set these targets is very minimal: date, town, number of people that were killed, and whether they were in a car or a pedestrian or motorcyclist. And that's all the data that we get in time to prepare these numbers for you. And then about a month and a half after we send these numbers to you, the full data set for fatalities gets released, and we can go back and do a more in-depth analysis. But the timing of that lines up with the data snapshot, and
I'm not as hung up about the timeliness of it, so much as that we do it.
Sure.
And so once we have the full data set, I'd like to be able to look back at that and say, yeah, that's a real number, or no, that's just, random, arbitrary, and of no value.
Yeah. Yeah, and unfortunately, we can go back and do more detailed analysis of the crash data. Unfortunately, it's never here in time for this conversation. We can work towards having good analysis of this year for next February.
Or we can look at it for a data snapshot on MTV.
We can include that in the metro plan. For the, and kind of additional analysis on that.
So I'm thinking about what we can do with the, redesign. It sounds like there's two things that can be helpful. I don't know how we can do it. One is, how do we help the state provide you better data more than one thing better? And then also some of the other level, so that you can then target, oh, that intersection or that stretch of road is a place where we could, impact. And the other is advocating for legislation statewide, for the CPOW laws, things like that. Those are the two areas of leverage that we have. Is that, am I doing that right?
And yes, and I would argue that the advocacy for specific policies and laws is gonna have the biggest impact. Partially because the state is making huge strides in just ability to analyze data. I'm hopeful, like I said, that within the year, we should be able to be more targeted in not only where crashes have happened, but when I'm working with the state on an update to their decision-making kind of processes, how can we be more proactive? So we know these circumstances like the skew of an intersection or you name it, like any of those parameters, those contribute to crashes. Because we have data on certain intersections from the past. So let's look at similar intersections that don't have crashes and address those before a crash happens. And sort of update the decision-making process and enable the state to distribute their highway safety funds to accomplish those things. And identify what can make the highest impact or the lowest cost. And so that's why I mentioned pedestrians. A small change to the infrastructure to slow vehicles down and make pedestrians more visible can have a huge impact, not only on the pedestrian crashes, but just slow the dang cars down into downtown. Let's just pick a spot and just do that, those sorts of things. So, yeah. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, it was made about outside traffic, out of state traffic, sorry. And I agree with, do we have data on that? And as far as the inspection stickers, how many of those vehicles that have been in accidents, whether it's serious or fatal, didn't pass inspection? How many of those vehicles are on the road that weren't supposed to be on the road? I know there's no data on that right now. At least we do.
I've looked at crash reports where communities have said, we have had fatal crashes at this intersection through the road safety audit program. And whenever a community comes to me, I said, the best thing you do is I need the crash reports from your police department. Let me look through them. I don't care about people's names and license plates and birth dates.
Right.
I just need to look at the gist and I put together a whole big diagram. That's just the fastest thing. I've never seen anything. I don't remember seeing anything in a report like suspect brake failure or something. Because just practically speaking, what officer is going to get down on the ground and like on one of the little scooty, scooty upstairs and look at the brake.
It's hard to determine that, oh, it had brake failure when the tire was torn off of it.
Yeah.
So yeah, there was failure somewhere. But also the increase in vehicles on the road. When you have a family, a husband, wife, they have children, they have 3 children. They originally had only 2 vehicles, a husband and wife. They have 3 children, there's 3 more vehicles. So now there's 5 vehicles on that same parking lot. No, driveway, sorry, same thing. So what's the increase involving the amount of the population and the amount of vehicles per year that increase?
That's pretty steady, about 1% in terms of statewide volumes annually. It's surprisingly steady in terms of volumes. There was a little dip during the pandemic, but it was really only a couple of months, in terms of traffic volumes. So I know this is an extremely important, topic and there's much to discuss. I'm conscious of the time and I don't even, 10:06, so we have to get what's left on the agenda. Okay, so I want to save time for that, because it is related. So let me get through the rest of the slides here real quick. I think the next one is similar to this one, but for the 50% reduction in serious injuries. There's just sort of funny break in the way the data showed up, or the graphics showed up there, but similar approach. So target of 44.5, for 2026. Next, please. Non-motorized serious injuries and fatalities, target of 3.6. So I will never advocate for a target that is higher than the previous year. We've been lucky in not really having to deal with that, but that just doesn't sit right with me. So 3.6 for the coming year. Again, you can see anticipating kind of a weird bump. It's almost mirrors the actual data with the projected data. So we're not hoping for 6 fatalities in 2027, but just being realistic with the weird cyclical trends. We do track motorcycle fatalities. Those are not required as a specific target or measure in the federal requirements, but since they are a significant factor in New Hampshire, you can see 2023. You can see the jump in 2019 and then a happy decrease in 2020. That 2019 number will fall out of the data next round, but that 2023 number will persist and kind of it drags up the 5-year rolling average. So we're not required to set a target, but we do track this. Next slide. Sorry about that. So with the rate targets, as I mentioned, recommending that we support the state target, just sort of keep doing what we're doing. But we will always have a higher rate than the state because it's the math. Next, please. So the best thing for us to do to reduce the rate of fatalities is just to reduce fatalities. Because the alternative is you could boost VMT, vehicle miles traveled, just to skew things, so even more cars on the road, and assume the same rate of fatalities or the same number of fatalities. That that's just playing with the numbers. So just saying, let's get rid of fatalities and we won't have to worry about the rate. Is kind of the approach here. With me, so circular reasoning. Okay. Any questions there? I'm trying not to blitz through the details here. Yes. You have next, please. Yes.
So when we're going to approve this, is that what we're doing?
Please and thank you. So the targets for this year. I think the next slide, please, should be on the far right there. It's just a summary of the targets. For fatalities, 11.4, supporting the fatality rate that the state sets. Serious injuries, 44.5, and the non-motorized at 3.6. So those are the targets we're shooting for 2026. And as you heard, we've already hit 9. I pointed out that when I gave my testimony on the 10-year plan, which focused on the loss of safety projects throughout the region because of the revenue shortfall, I pointed out that we already had 6 fatalities on New Hampshire roads in that day. So I think that is it. Yes, there's more of the crazy math behind it if you really want to get into it. So you can go back to the big part.
regarding those targets, you know, I'll make a pitch again in terms of doing a, reliability analysis. We don't know, looking at that data, if that would be just a spurious drop, when, you know, how reliable that is. So, you know, even though I know we're set to approve those, I think there ought to be a giant asterisk beside that. You know, until we go through that whole analysis, is this, if we saw that number, it's statistically significant, as opposed to simply just a variation, normal variation of data.
Okay, so you're talking about, is the year representative of the overall trend, or is it? So yeah, we would have an asterisk if something, we had a truly catastrophic, like the multi-motorcycle crash in our region, that would have to be addressed specifically.
As an outlier, but the data is presented right now, we're not factoring in that kind of outlier. So I'd still want to know whether or not that data is representative, as a unexpected decline, in the sense that the work that you guys are doing actually works.
Yep.
That's why we look at the 5-year rolling average for the target setting and not the annual year-to-year numbers. It's the closest that we have to capturing those outliers.
And it's the right path to look at a 5-year plan, 5-year result, but I think more analysis, and I think you agree, can be done.
Anything that we can do to look at ways to have a more targeted approach, I'm certainly up for. So we have the regional safety action plan that we'll be able to do more with as the state's database comes online. Just the one headline from the action plan is run off the road was the leading factor in crashes with fatalities. And I said it in that weird way because we are not able to determine whether someone ran off the road and hit a tree or was in a crash and their vehicle ran off the road, because the police officer will check that box if the vehicle is off the road when they respond to the scene. So whether it was a deer, a snowstorm and someone spun out, or a crash happened and the vehicles left the road. In either case, it will be reported as run off the road was a factor in that. Not wearing a seatbelt, weather, distraction, all could be contributing factors. So we have some level of detail in causal factors in crashes in the region. It's drilling down to what actually happened and what we can do about it. That's the hard part.
So I realize much of this is driven by the federal requirements, but the actual data collection form that the state uses,
yes,
is that a state dictated or is it federal?
Yes, we are up to the MUC 12 is the I don't remember what MUC stands for, but uniform something that the state adopts as the for all officers, so that we get consistent data coming from Gorham, Rochester, Keene, and it's all the same form, and it is exhaustive, the number of points that have to be collected from that form, including when they go back. I wonder how many hours officers spent typing out the gist and then drawing it. So yeah.
Okay. So is there anything in that form data that is missing in your opinion? Or that needs clarification or specification so that
I hesitate to ask. No, I think that the forms are fairly comprehensive. It's getting the written out and drawn gist into the hands of regional agencies that are dealing with crashes. To get that, because that the level of detail is really pulled up in the descriptions of what happened, because they ask people at the scene, like what happened, and then they get detailed, you know, I crashed because I couldn't see them because of sunlight, or I spun out because I hit a patch of ice that I couldn't see coming around the corner.
I'm just wondering if there's a way, may not be easy, but to change that process of what you get, whether it requires legislation or it's just something that's within the executive branch that can be done, that if you feel that it would be helpful, is it worth pursuing through all the other regional entities to say, we would like this data, and whether something executive council can approve with the governor, that this is what the state police will do, or is it legislative?
think regular officer training on the current form and protocols and how each thing should be filled out would be helpful. So, a while back, I think probably about 10 years ago, there were concerns with the reliability of the type of injury and severity of injury for non-fatal crashes. Because of lack of clarity with some officers on what is a serious injury versus a less serious injury. And so like there's been over time some fluctuation in the accuracy of that field in particular, because is a sprain a serious injury or not, and differences in officer training across the state and how that field gets filled out. So I think regular refreshers on how to fill things out and get training.
And I guess,
Impactful to the data.
to be fully honest, I'm reluctant to ask officers to do anything more. It's the process of the data getting to people who can do something about it after the officer submits the report. Because it goes through this whole game of telephone, before it can get to, if anything, we need more officers to be out reporting the traffic violations. Because they're, and it's weird stuff like when I speak to officers in Lee, not so long ago, reporting just increases in road rage, people brandishing firearms, in road rage incidents and stuff like that. So it's just a black hole of issues with like the culture around driving.
Just building on a few points, I appreciated your relevant trends toward the end of the report. Where you identified maybe some things that are contributing, the addictions and so forth. What I didn't see in there, maybe it's just assumed, was the alcohol issue as well, but maybe that's embedded in some of this as well.
I think, yeah, it is sort of embedded as a current assumed to be an issue.
The other point I was just going to share, so the city of Somersworth, we had an unfortunate pedestrian fatality a couple of months ago on Old Rochester Road, 16B2, between Rochester and Dover, Somersworth. The accident happened in Somersworth. And it was an interesting process. I mean, it's unfortunate that it happened. This individual had walked in a stretch of Old Rochester Road for a long time with his dog. And apparently the accident happened right at dusk this particular time, and the driver didn't notice this individual, and both the individual pedestrian and the dog was killed. We then reflected, and we got involved with both the state, the city of Dover, the city of Rochester, and Somersworth, and we looked at how could this be prevented? What was missing there? And I mean, some things are obvious. There's sidewalks that are missing. And we looked at some streetlights also, and they ended up working with Eversource, and that's pending right now, as a matter of fact, to add streetlights in this corridor. It's kind of the southern corridor of this road toward the Dover end. Looked at changing the location of speed reduction signs. We also talked about that with the state. What else did we do? We're looking at adding width to the shoulder, even though there's no sidewalk there, but the road is pegged to be repaved in a year. So we're working with the state on that. It's kind of immediacy, I would guess. And unfortunately, sometimes these things are knee-jerk reactions, and we look at it, but hopefully something. Lighting, I think that was my other point. Lighting may be a factor sometimes, not always, but lighting could be.
Yeah, there are big legislative changes, and then there's just a game of inches of cumulative improvements. When paving is happening,
yeah.
When utilities are being upgraded, what can we do to streetscape on top of that? Sidewalks are really expensive to implement, but yeah, you can do things without building a sidewalk that improve pedestrian safety and vehicle safety. So any other questions on the targets themselves?
It seems like all the targets are between 5 and 10% reductions versus last year.
I have not looked at that exactly.
It's from 12.3 to 11.4, from 46 to 44, from 4 to 3.6.
Okay.
short of any implementations like, seatbelt law, helmets, legal marijuana, opioid, like, how do you get the 5%? What's driving the 5% reduction if none of these items are being addressed?
That's a good question. It's purely based on the data. I didn't set out for a 5% reduction year to year necessarily. To, I think, answer your question. Just looking at the data versus the trends, what we need to hit that target by 2035. So that is coincidental, honestly, the percentages you're seeing there.
Okay.
So I'll be honest, there's a disconnect between the targets, and, what we can do for major change that would see, a 5% drop overall in the number of fatalities. So it's changing the streets. The thing that someone mentioned, speed, that is arguably the contributing factor to whether someone is injured or killed or you have a fender bender, especially in areas where pedestrians are more prevalent. So I'm looking at sort of within the context of the street, sort of right size approaches. I would argue that no one should be driving over 20 miles an hour in a heavily residential neighborhood. There's just no reason for that. Go through the traffic light like everyone else. This Spalding Turnpike is designed for speed and throughput. That's the way that's designed. And there are things that you have to change the infrastructure if you want to slow vehicles down. So there's a big difference between what this posted speed is and the way the road is designed in many cases. So I've been working with municipalities to identify where do you want vehicles to slow down, entering your downtown, a heavily commercial zone. So let's find ways to slow vehicles down with as little cost as possible. And someone mentioned the flashing pedestrian crossing. Those have a big impact because they are only activated when a pedestrian is there and you have that immediate visual response that cues you to someone trying to cross the road.
Colin, are we needing to then adopt this?
Oh, yes, please. When it comes down to it, we will get dinged by federal highways if we don't have targets set.
Yeah. I would move approval of the 26 regional highway safety performance targets.
Second.
All right, for discussion.
You can come talk to me anytime. Getting on you. I'm open for any suggestions and thoughts.
Roll call vote. Paul Rasmussen, aye.
Mike Levinsky, aye.
Mark Richardson, aye.
Joe Boudreau, aye.
Mike Claremont, aye.
Lee Holwood, aye.
Marshall Goldberg, aye.
Michael Williams, yes.
Kate Bizard, aye.
Downtown, aye.
John Mullen, aye.
Steve Stansel, aye.
Brian Manther, aye. Rick Healy, aye.
Lindsay. Oh, sorry. Backroom.
Krista?
Mr. Shane, aye.
Ian McDermott, aye.
Jim Hansbrough.
Sarah Raisman, aye.
Lindsay?
Lindsay Williams, aye.
Jack?
Jack Wade, abstain.
Glenn? No fun. All right. Passes. Other business. Anyone think about that? Easy alternate position?
We've got pedestrian.
Oh, I'm sorry. Well, pedestrian level of traffic stress out.
This is 15 minutes ahead, so people will over the time. So
last year, we had our pedestrian level of stress project, which captured a few different, planning goals. The highlights are that we completed a model with Rockingham Planning Commission to assess, accessibility and stress level near our 400 or 500 coast and UNH Wildcat transit stops in both regions. Part two of that project was doing some land use considerations across site plan regulations and a couple other things. So it's broken out into a few parts. We had the main model, which I'll get into, and I'll get into all of these momentarily. We had the main model and mapping exercise. We had the site plan regulations and guidance for model implementing for adjustments to site plan regulation. We had and then we took, the intent was to do a pilot of some of that language with both Dover and Portsmouth, but those got a little bit adjusted because Dover said they didn't need too much help with the site plan stuff, so we pivoted. I think Portsmouth moved forward with a couple adjustments, but I'm not totally sure where Rockingham Planning Commission wound up on that front. As a recap, this is the transit service areas we have in our region, both regions. Coast, of course, stretches from Farmington to Portsmouth, with hitting a couple towns on the main side. They've had to strip back a little bit with funding and the evolving landscape, kind of unfortunate. UNH Wildcat, same deal with Newmarket. They also had to pare back a little bit. So they're really just Dover, Durham, and the key shopping areas in Portsmouth, Newington. So the transit stop study and report, that was this map and the report that went with it. And that was really an overview of who are our two transit providers in this region, what can they offer across the, I think it's maybe 10 fixed routes now. Like with us, sorry, depends on how you count it. Yeah, 10 fixed routes and their paratransit services that go with it. How much service are they able to provide? How many bus stops are there? And what is they're being tapped, as I understand it, more and more for paratransit services, and how does this impact the level of service they're able to provide on the actual fixed route side of things in both regions? The map itself, I will get into the methodology shortly. Rachel played a huge role, crafted that methodology from scratch, in evaluating where we have sidewalks in both regions and what it's actually like to walk on roads without and with sidewalks. There are instances where it might feel safer to walk on a road that doesn't even have a sidewalk because of the traffic volume and the traffic speed is just so low. In contrast to, there are places with a sidewalk that don't feel safe because of high vehicle speed, or there's not enough of a right of way that has a good enough buffer between. So we took that and we looked at the 400 bus stops and kind of glanced through what the scoring from the actual PLTS, pedestrian level of traffic stress, spit out for what's near the transit stops. And that was also, we got some really good numbers on where Coast has the most traffic at its bus stops and where they have the most demand for actual destinations of paratransit users. Site plan regulation and guidance. For those who aren't familiar, site plan regulations in your community are different from zoning. Site plan and subdivision regulations are getting really into the weeds of what's on the site. This is where communities will choose to implement, can I require a sidewalk if this development has such and such threshold? This is where we get into parking requirements. This is where we get into the arrangement of the parking lots and how many handicap accessible parking spots am I going to include? And what does it look like for the handicap accessible spot to get to the entrance of the actual building? For Dover, like I said, we ended up not really touching their site plan regs too much. Instead, we pivoted to their mechanism for asking for contributions from developers in terms of accessibility. we might call that exactions, we might call that offsite improvements. They've been experimenting with what they are even charging for impact fees, or they were at the time of when we drafted this. And secondly, within the traffic impact analysis that they would ask from a developer when they're proposing new development, we sat down with them and had conversations about, well, what kind of conversations are you having about the nearest coast or UNH bus stop in Dover? What kind of conversations are you having about when you would ask a developer to contribute something towards accessibility or sidewalks or walkability? Notably, they had recently asked a developer to implement a RRFB, rectangular rapid flashing beacon light at one of their crosswalks. So we had really good conversation there. So this is the methodology, going back to the map you just saw. The methodology we crafted, we can do either way. We can do the text or we can do the chart. We took a look at where were the bus routes in late 2024, early 2025 across both regions. How good was our sidewalk data? Some of it evidently was not up to date, so we did chase down a couple municipalities for more recent sidewalk data. And we looked at things like the buffer width and the posted speed limit of the roads. So Rachel did some voodoo, the math voodoo. With
The chart shows what the voodoo was.
Thank you. And it cost up a PLTS score from 1 to 5. 1 being the best, 4 being the least ideal, and 5 being a road that you just can't walk on, like the small right? Do you want to add anything to this slide real quick?
Does anyone want me to?
I got one question. So, and it does have to do with this grading, I believe, which is, what about accessibility between the two sides of the road?
Yes,
You know, in terms of being able to cross the road.
I thought of that as well. There's not a lot of crosswalks in the future, but there's a lot of places where you need to cross the street. I live in and walk my dog in Rochester, and I see 2 crosswalks on my walk, and they're not where I cross the street. So every time I cross the street, I'm not crossing. So I added, in addition to each side of the road, crossing score, which looks at the number of lanes, the AADT, the average annual daily traffic, and the speeds. And did some math about like common walking speed assumptions and how fast do you have to run across the street to not get flattened. And so if the answer was really fast, then that's more stressful. And so that does play a factor in this. Mark, I'm too far away from your screen, so I couldn't see in the map that you showed if it had the 3 lines or just 2. Okay, so in our interactive map that goes with this, when you're looking at the roads, there should be 3 lines. The 2 on the sides are for each side of the road, and then the one in the middle is for that if you have to cross in the middle of the block or just
Route 4, Route 108, Dover Point Road.
Oh yeah, those are very red and scary.
Yeah.
Yeah. On both sides and then.
Yeah, because I almost daily, I see somebody standing alongside Route 4.
Yeah.
Waiting for the bus, and
That red
when
line
they
is
come
actually
home, they're going to be
Route
dropped
4.
off on the wrong side of Route 4.
Yeah.
Does the model account for winter maintenance practices along any of these routes?
Alas, it does not. East Rochester would be much redder if it did. No, I'd love to add that to it.
Is that something that could be helpful for municipalities to provide to you in the future, where it would be like yes, this is our sidewalk plowing route or something like that, that could help?
I can speak to that, because that's kind of where the planner part comes back in. So if we did, when we wrote the model language and guidance for site plan regulations, we were looking into that kind of stuff, like, okay, we have this great model completed, or how walkable, how safe is it to walk in your community, even if your community has no sidewalks. There's still something to glean from that, but winter maintenance could certainly be a part of that. And I know that some communities might be resistant to adding new sidewalks because they just don't have the budget to either put them in or to continue to maintain them after. For those who don't know, in New Hampshire, the municipality is responsible for the sidewalk. On the Dover side, what I ended up writing for their traffic impact analysis requirements was a lot of how close is your development to the nearest coast UNH stop or the train station itself? And what could the city consider requiring additionally? What other information could they ask a developer for if they're within such and such distance of those things? And could they extend a sidewalk? Could they be asked to extend a sidewalk? And it's getting into what is an exaction and what is an offsite contribution that you'd be asking for that's reasonable and still has a nexus or is related enough to the actual development that they're asking for.
Well, I think that's really important work in this space because, you know, we've in Dover built a couple developments that are fairly disconnected from downtown. You know, you think of Point Place, there's not really a way to walk into downtown, or similarly, they're about to put a number of units out on Littleworth Road with almost no access for pedestrians or cyclists are in a different matter, but, you know, I approve of the development, but, you know, the having an ability to get there on foot should be a consideration.
And we have residents who have moved to Dover to be car free.
Yes.
Like that should be it should be on the brain. So, and last thing I'll say on this is I didn't really work too much on what the exaction language would be or the mitigation language. They're calling it mitigation language within their regs. I didn't dive too much into that. That felt like not my territory necessarily, but I did pull some case studies from other areas and what is their mechanism for assessing. There were a couple suburban counties, one outside of Washington DC and one outside of Philadelphia. One had its own model TOD, transit-oriented development ordinance that it issued to its municipalities. Another one just had a very detailed scoring system for coming up with a calculator for what that dollar amount would be from a developer based on, it is in their instance, it's literally tied to one of their PLTS scores. Then their version of the map I just showed you. So it is 10 something, my computer's off by 15 minutes, but quick questions, please.
Well, I have one thing on the transit side. So
yeah,
by federal law, Coast is required to provide door-to-door service for people whose disability prevents them from being able to use the public bus. And we do, it's an application-based process where we evaluate that is valid. Probably one of the leading reasons why people are on that system is because of the poor state of our sidewalk infrastructure. They can't get to or from the bus stop because of the pedestrian network and the way it interacts with their disability. Whereas if there were improved pedestrian network, they could use the bus. And that's worth municipalities knowing because that program is about 4% of our riders and about 24% of our budget. And the municipalities are paying for that because they're the ones funding the local badge for Coast. So there is a cost to the communities for that. You know, that is worth being aware of, that is off balancing the savings.
And I'll say the conversation we had with you, Michael, was one of the most helpful pieces of the entire project, was you talking about like, well, what does it look like for a bus to actually be rerouted through a parking lot of a shopping center, and in that instance, it would be like, there's no way you would recommend like, well, you should add, the developer should add a Coast stop to the developer, like, it just doesn't pencil out that way for you all, and thank you for helping.
And I forget if I brought it up but Wildcat cut back their off-campus routes by about 30% this semester.
Okay.
On crosswalks, the way the law works, with a signal crosswalk, the pedestrian has the right of way, which means the automobile sees that it's signaled, slow down. Non-signal crosswalks, they do not have the right of way. You have to stop and look, which you should do anyways. But a lot of people just assume they step on the side of the crosswalk, cars have to stop. That is not the fact. I've seen people get hit by cars on non-signal sidewalks, crosswalks. So educating the public will be very well learned. Now, when you see a person stepping on the crosswalk, etiquette says slow down when you cross, but that is not the law. So, I spent 10 years on as chairman of the safety committee in Rochester. I went through a lot of that. And sidewalks, a wider shoulder is the easiest and cheapest, because when the city has to plow the sidewalk, since it's just a painted stripe, they plow the road and the sidewalk all in one shot. Very cheap for the city and it's easy to build. Otherwise, you've got vertical or sloped sidewalks, which is a whole different issue. Plows, they hit a vertical sidewalk curving to tear the plow right off the vehicle. A slope could cause it to ride up over and onto the sidewalk. The vehicle or the snowplow itself will still be able to maintain control. So there's a lot involved in sidewalks, not even including the maintenance. So as a recommendation, I would say widening the road, I believe it's 4 feet. Well, it used to be 4 feet. I don't know what it is now. It used to be 4 feet. Makes it a lot of people think it's a breakdown lane. Well, if your car's only 4 feet wide, then it's probably not a car. And it's not legal for the road. They're usually what we call painted sidewalks. So any municipality that's building, wants a sidewalk, but can't afford it, that's the cheapest and easiest to maintain.
I will also point out, the grants that we were able to secure for the town of Milton to do their walk audit, the AARP Community Challenge Grant, that is reopened and those are due March 4th. So, I would talk to Rachel probably if anyone's interested in pursuing those. So, there's no action needed on this, but this was a huge part of my 2025 and I'm really happy with how it came out.
And so we can use this, if there are places in your community, we can take a look at this map and look at the crossing scores, where are barriers to pedestrians from, between important destinations, whether that's school, city hall, you name it, could be your downtown. Take a look at pedestrians and where can small improvements make a big difference, in people's ability to get from their front door to something in town.
Well, I'll say for many of the people who need it most, they're not living downtown.
No. So, yeah, and vice versa, people that live downtown that you could get to, if you don't have your shopping center downtown, it's.
Just two things. Is the data available in our GS outline or? Yes, okay. I haven't looked for it yet, so.
Yeah, I'll send a link in my recap.
And we kind of skipped the commissioner roundtable at the beginning. And I do have something to share on that. So just in the confusion when we were transitioning, I don't know.
Yeah, no, we can come back to that.
Okay.
And so once we're done with this, I'll hit the round table.
Okay.
So we're done?
I'm all set.
All right, Commissioner Ryan. Commissioner Roundtable.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I did have, so an organization I'm on the board of, Seacoast Area Bicycle Riders, is preparing for our annual celebration of Bike Month, but also throughout the rest of the year, we're trying to host events that promote people on bicycles, whether that's in more urbanized areas or in rural contexts as well. So if you want events in your community, we're working on some in Dover, Portsmouth, Durham, Newmarket at the moment, but there could be more. I'd love to host an event in Rochester, Somersworth, even deeper up. You know, I'm just thinking of the more built up areas, but you go deeper out and we would love to have events that promote ideally safety, but also just getting people outside for fun events. So please talk to me or reach out if you have any questions or want to get on the schedule.
What is Bike Month?
Oh yeah, sorry, Bike Month is May. So centering around the Bike to Work Week events. So that's going to be the 15th of May. It's always on a Friday. And there are a couple events. So the region used to host bicycle to work breakfasts kind of regionally. We've been able to establish two, one in Portsmouth and one in Dover. Those are some of the events we're working on to promote people going to work in a sustainable way. But we would love to have more of those. It just requires funding and some coordination and volunteerism. So
avoid Durham on the 15th.
Avoid Durham on the 15th. What's on? Oh, is that graduation? Yeah.
And Kian, Coast will be, there is in the process soon of hiring a replacement for Ann Rugg.
Oh, excellent.
The Commute Smart
I've been
coordinator.
curious
So
about that, yeah.
once that person's back on board, then we can
Yeah.
do more.
Okay. What is the timeline looking like for that?
We can talk that.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have a couple of things that I want to mention, some regional, some Rochester. From an economic development point of view, I don't know if you noticed, but we had three companies come forward to look at rebuilding the care pharmacy area.
Yeah.
And three proposals, and it's going to have residential, condos, apartments, and it's also going to have retail, similar to what we're seeing in a lot of other spots. So I think that's very positive. It's very early, but that's starting. Second thing I wanted to just mention was housing. I remember, I don't know, it was 2020 or whatever, we were saying that by 2040 or 2045, we had to come up with 40,000 new homes or residences, and I was very skeptical. But what I'm seeing now, region-wise, is a lot of activity. Rochester, Dover, Somersworth, other communities. So I'm very, very positive now that we're going to be able to get a lot of that housing. The only unfortunate part is I'm not seeing a lot of less expensive housing, whether that's, apartments or whatever. And the third item that I think is regional, but impacts Rochester, is infrastructure. I just noticed, and I saw this in Foster's, that Rochester is looking to fix or replace the arena. And fixing is about 5 million, replacing is about 20 million. But it reminded me of what's happening. We just did the school here with the athletic field. Dover's doing something around $20 million vis-a-vis there. I'm on the commission board for the utilities in Rochester. We're going to see a lot of expense around infrastructure in the next few years, water and sewer. I see Exeter just talks about what they're doing. Portsmouth has just are going to be increasing their rates substantially because of the infrastructure they had to do. So just an awareness, and I'm sure we all are, but that's going to, I think, become more and more significant in our region, in our towns, in our cities. The arena in Rochester is 50 years old. And guess what? Under the pavement, there's lots of older than 50-year infrastructure components. So anyway, just thoughts on those things.
Anyone else? Put it around table.
Right. Just a reminder that I've been involved with an effort to sort of diffuse the level of angst in our collective communities. I know that's kind of a general description, but largely the first series was how to talk to your neighbor. and not come to fisticuffs and how to resolve, how just to get acquainted with your neighbor. And, I'm a lifelong Yankee and I know we are tough to talk to, you know, we get isolated, particularly in the winter. So anyway, so we've had those three sessions, we're in the middle now of, ACLU is presenting, and this is all at the Barrington Library. ACLU is just talking about how you can use your personal power. If you have an issue you want to, engage with the town or your legislator, or, you know, name your particular, thorn in your, under your saddle. That's what these ACLU, sessions are meant for, is to how to use the law to your advantage. And, you know, without creating undue, conflict. These are all free, they go from 6 to 8, the next one is on March 12th. And, registration is strongly encouraged, we have a limited seating capacity of 50 people, and we've been filling it, so I just offer that up to you and yours. If you have a question or further questions, I just give you my business card and you can email me.
The Dover land use chapter was finished and approved by the city council, or the, planning board 2 weeks ago, I believe. I was the chair of the committee, very excited that it was approved. And I encourage everyone to look at the overlay that we used on the zoning districts. I think it's a very interesting look at how neighborhoods kind of connect and feed into, the downtown areas.
All right. What about other business?
I'll just note on that alternates request, we can actually have 2 alternates. Oh.
All right. Citizens forum. Adjournment.
I'll move to adjourn.
Move to adjourn by Michael. Second. Second by Don. All in favor, roll call vote. Paul Rasmussen, aye. No. Not for adjourn?
Not for sure.
All in favor, aye.